Hello, welcome to the programme. I'm Lewis Vaughan-Jones. We start in Spain, where more than 1,000 emergency workers have been deployed to Valencia and other affected regions after devastating flash flooding has killed at least 158 people across southern and eastern Spain. We'll take a look at some of the impact here. Some people have accused the Regional Civil Protection Agency of not being prepared enough, saying it only issued its highest emergency alert on Tuesday evening when the flooding had already caused widespread damage. Well, this is the European Space Agency's satellite image of the area south of Valencia, taken earlier this month before the flooding. You can see there the lagoon. Keep an eye on that in this second image. This was taken on Wednesday, and you can see the level of flooding there. Well, on a visit to the region, Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez said the authorities were using all resources at their disposal to rebuild infrastructure and restore basic services. Let's get the latest from our reporter, Steve Nibbs.
This flooding is one of the worst natural disasters in recent Spanish history. More than 90 people are so far confirmed to have died, and there are fears the number could rise. Emergency teams are working around the clock to try and find those missing and rescue others trapped by the floodwater. Some places are only accessible from the air, residents being winched into helicopters to escape the devastation. Hundreds of soldiers have also been deployed to help in the rescue effort, working in difficult and dangerous conditions. The Prime Minister, Pedro Sánchez, warned today that this crisis is far from over and urged people to stay safe.
Please do not go out. Stay home. Follow the alerts from the emergency services. Follow all their requirements, all their recommendations, because at the moment the most important thing is to save as many lives as possible.
In Valencia, the floods caused havoc never seen here before, washing cars away that were left piled up in the streets as the waters receded. The aftermath: broken roads, homes and businesses covered in mud and silt. In some areas, more than a year's worth of rain fell in just a few hours.
Never before in history has there been so much rain. You can't even imagine the amount of rain that fell here yesterday.
It is a catastrophe. The floods we had in 1982, when I was 10 years old, were a joke compared to what happened here yesterday.
In Utiel, the streets are now a dumping ground for cars, furniture and belongings destroyed by the floods.
Yesterday this was full of people, and today it is still empty. It's utter desolation. With time, everything will go back to normal, just like the river.
The day before yesterday was very bad, horrible. We had never experienced this before. This is something that came to us, and it is a ruin for the town.
Meanwhile, Spain has declared 3 days of national mourning as it comes to terms with the aftermath of this deadly force of nature. Steve Nibbs, BBC News.
Well, let's just take a look at the map of Spain to show exactly what areas have been impacted. You may remember that earlier this week, parts of the Valencia region received a year's worth of rain in just 8 hours. Well, let's speak to the BBC's Guy Hedgecoe, who's in Madrid. Guy, bring us up to date with the latest.
Well, Lewis, that death toll continues to rise, and that was the worry of authorities today. We were expecting that number to keep increasing, and that's because there are so many people who are still missing. A lot of local people on the ground have been talking about neighbours of theirs or even relatives who haven't been accounted for in many parts of Valencia in particular. And it's Valencia which has really borne the brunt of this, although the neighbouring regions, Castilla-La Mancha and Andalusia, have also been affected. But in Valencia, there are areas where people don't have drinking water, they don't have enough food, they've struggled to find spades, for example, to dig out the mud from their homes. There has been some looting as well in parts of Valencia. 39 people were arrested for looting shops and taking goods out of them today. In other areas, infrastructure such as rail links, for example, there's a tremendous amount of disruption still. The high-speed rail link between Madrid and Valencia is going to be closed for at least 2 weeks, we've been told by the Transport Minister. And more than 100 roads in Valencia remain closed as well.
Okay, just looking ahead, what is in store? What is coming up with the weather?
Well, the authorities have been warning about more sort of weather events in other areas of Valencia or near Valencia. Those have not transpired. There was quite a severe warning for an area north of Valencia earlier today, but that warning has been withdrawn. However, there is heavy rainfall down in parts of Andalusia, near the city of Seville. There's heavy rainfall, and there is a weather alert there. So that bad weather seems to have spread down there, and also up in the northeast of the country, there's very heavy rain as well.
Okay, Guy, thank you for that. So we will have continuous coverage from Spain, of course, with the impact as emergency services still trying to get to certain areas there where roads are still blocked. We'll have plenty more coverage coming up.
Well over 56 million Americans have already voted early, and we're now less than a week out from Election Day. The presidential candidates are racing to reach as many voters as possible. Right now, we're on pace to reach the record-breaking participation level we saw 4 years ago. Both candidates are hitting the swing states that'll likely decide the election. Vice President Harris just wrapped up an event in Pennsylvania and is flying to Wisconsin for another rally tonight. She started the day in North Carolina, encouraging people to vote early and promising to keep an open mind if she's elected.
And I pledge to you, I will listen to experts. I will listen to those impacted by the decisions I make and to people who disagree with me.
Former President Trump is on his way to Wisconsin right now, but he was in Rocky Mount this afternoon, less than an hour from the vice president's rally. North Carolina is key to both campaigns, and the latest data shows nearly 45% of registered voters have already cast a ballot. Mr. Trump accused President Biden of insulting his supporters when Mr. Biden addressed a comedian's disparaging comments about Puerto Rico at a Trump rally. The president said, "The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. His demonization of Latinos is unconscionable." The White House claims he was referring to the rhetoric, not the people supporting the former president.
My response to Joe and Kamala is very simple. You can't lead America if you don't love Americans.
But even Vice President Harris broke with President Biden, saying, quote, "I strongly disagree with any criticism of people based on who they vote for."
US Vice President Kamala Harris has moments ago finished what's been called her closing arguments to voters, and in a poignant location. The presidential hopeful addressing supporters a short walk from the White House in the very spot that her opponent Donald Trump riled up his base prior to the attempted insurrection at the Capitol building. We'll go live to our US correspondent Jonathan Kersley. Jono, it was a powerful address. What she had to say.
Yeah, this was a powerful address. Kamala Harris, the vice president, needed a big moment in front of the White House 7 days out from Election Day, and her campaign would feel tonight that she delivered. What essentially she did here tonight was draw a contrast between herself as a woman and somebody who wants to be president, who she says stands for freedom, is about hope, and compared that to Donald Trump, somebody she says was obsessed and consumed by grievance. She spoke for around about half an hour or so here on the Ellipse, picking this very site because it was almost 4 years ago. Donald Trump stood here on January 6, 2021, 1,392 days ago, and urged his supporters to march on the Capitol. What followed was an insurrection. Now, Kamala Harris in part reflected on that here tonight. She also reflected on what she said was Donald Trump's effectively being, as she described it, a mark for autocratic leaders. This speech had the crowd on their feet. It was a big moment in this campaign, and this is some of what she had to say.
1 week from today, you will have the chance to make a decision that directly impacts your life, the life of your family, and the future of this country we love. America, this is not a candidate for president who is thinking about how to make your life better. This is someone who is unstable, obsessed with revenge, consumed with grievance, and out for unchecked power.
She called it her closing argument here tonight in front of a massive crowd, but there is still 7 days of campaigning to go. Donald Trump has been in the crucial state of Pennsylvania, and Davina, exactly 7 days from this very point, Americans' election will be over. The ballots will start to be counted. We could soon find out who America's next president will be.
Jonathan Kersey live.
Mexico has been apprehending more migrants than the United States since May as part of the country's biggest migration crackdown ever. According to Reuters, Mexico has apprehended approximately 100,000 migrants a month since January, while U.S. border officials apprehended 54,000 migrants trying to illegally cross in between ports of entry in September. The Reuters report details the Mexican government's efforts to prevent migrants from reaching the U.S.-Mexico border through detentions and administrative obstacles. There's also a program to bus and fly non-Mexican migrants to the southern part of the country near Guatemala. The Reuters article is based on public data and conversations with a dozen U.S. and Mexican officials. Reuters journalists also witnessed migrants being put on buses at a military checkpoint just 25 miles south of the U.S.-Mexico border. According to Mexican officials who spoke anonymously, the goal of the program is to tire migrants so they give up before reaching the United States. However, on the record, Mexico's government said the purpose is to protect migrants from human traffickers. One migrant from Venezuela told Reuters that he was apprehended, driven south, and had to start his journey to America all over again. The report states the program is in its 10th month and started after U.S. officials closed a key trade route into the country, which had an estimated cost of $100 million a day. The data shows Mexico is now apprehending 4 times more migrants than it did during the Trump administration. Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum, who was just sworn in October 1st, has promised to work with whoever wins November's election.
All right, let's have a look in Melbourne now, because pro-Palestinian protesters have tried to hijack a concert. You're going to have to forgive me, I don't know the name of this person. Radiohead. I'm not a music person. Is it Tom York?
Tom York.
Tom York. Okay, let's have a look what happened.
Stage and say what you want to say. Don't stand there like a coward. Come here and say it. Come on. You want to on everybody's night? Come on.
Children, will it take for you to condemn the genocide in Gaza? How many?
See you later.
Oh, I don't know Tom York, but I like him a lot. Liz, the truth is Australians are just so sick of this. People paid a lot of money to go see an artist. They have to deal with something that they probably don't agree with being shoved in their face.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right, people paid a lot of money. I think the minimum prices of these tickets were about $120 to be within shouting distance of the artist, you know, like which you would assume that the person who was able to grab his attention would be. This person who came to protest probably paid around $200 to do that and to ruin everyone else's night. I actually find it really sad that people come to events like this and try and get this kind of reaction and try to engage with this. I think anyone who engages with this conflict knows that, you know, you're just constantly bombarded with misery and with devastation. The people who are making these protests are often the same people who, you know, claim to stand for peace. So I actually find it really sad that they, you know, also are then trying to deny people of 90 minutes, that's how long the show went for, of peace and, you know, to enjoy something beautiful.
Yeah, 100%. Graham, there's a time and a place. You know, we don't all have to agree. People have a right to protest, but stop ruining plays and concerts, please.
That's right. And the thing about art, Shari, is it's supposed to transcend politics. It's supposed to be something that can allow people to retreat into themselves and inspect the world. Protesting and calling out, this is the work of vulgarians.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, very quickly before we go, Liz, 30 seconds, the Queensland Premier, new Queensland Premier David Crisafulli, he's now delivering on his adult crime for adult time. So this is where youths are given adult penalties. This has got to be very popular in Queensland.
Yeah, it's been massively popular. It was a big cornerstone of the obviously very successful Queensland election campaign. And so Crisafulli now believes that he has a mandate to enforce these laws. He's fast-tracking them to get them in time for Christmas. It means that rather than, you know, 6 weeks of being before parliamentary committees, they'll only be scrutinised for 1 week. And for something that probably every expert and interested party in Queensland has already weighed in on, that seems like the right thing to do.
Yeah. Right,
and Japan has claimed that a missile fired by North Korea on Thursday had the longest flying time yet for the country. South Korea's military also said that Pyongyang has test-fired one of its most powerful missiles, first such test by North Korea since being accused of sending soldiers to Russia. North Korea confirmed the launch of the intercontinental ballistic missile, upgrading what it called the world's most powerful strategic weapon. As per the state media, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un said that the test was a warning to enemies that have been threatening the country's security. Seoul has warned a day prior that the North was preparing to test another intercontinental ballistic missile or even conduct a nuclear test ahead of next week's US elections. The launch came just hours after the United States and South Korean defense chiefs called on Pyongyang to withdraw its troops from Russia, warning that North Korean soldiers in Russian uniforms were being deployed for possible action against Ukrainian forces.
우리 군은 오늘 07시 10분경 북한이 평양 일대에서 동해상으로 발사한 장거리 탄도미사일 한 발을 포착하였습니다. 북한의 탄도미사일은 고각으로
Tokyo also confirmed the launch with Japan's defense minister, saying that the missile had flown for longer than any other previously tested by the North. He added that it may be different from conventional missiles. North Korea typically test fires its longest range and most powerful missiles on a so-called lofted trajectory, fired up, not out, which it says is to avoid overflying neighboring countries. Meanwhile, South Korea's military told lawmakers that preparations are nearly complete for an ICBM-class long-range missile. It said that the launch could involve an ICBM and be aimed at testing the North's atmospheric re-entry technology. Seoul has said that it is reviewing whether to send weapons directly to Ukraine in response. It has previously resisted due to long-standing domestic policy that prevents it from providing weaponry into active conflicts.
우리 군은 오늘 07시 10분경 북한이 평양 일대에서 동해상으로 발사한 장거리 탄도미사일 한 발을 포착하였습니다. 북한의 탄도미사일은 고각으로 발사되어 약 1000km 비행 후 동해상에 착륙하였으며 우리 군은 미측과 긴밀한 공조하에 탄도미사일 발사 준비 활동을 추적해왔습니다. 미국 대선이 임박해 있는 시점에서 북한의 협상력을 높이기 위한 전략이라는 판단과 현 상황을 탈피하기 위한 이벤트 가능성이 있다고 보고 있습니다.
Now, Russia's offensive in eastern Ukraine is gaining momentum. However, the Ukrainian drones are also increasingly targeting Russian military and civilian targets. Our next story details as to how Moscow is installing some drone jammers on passenger buses. Take a look at this report.
The Ukrainian military, despite its valiant efforts, is struggling to contain the Russian advance. Russia's forces are pushing deeper into eastern Ukraine, seizing new towns with swift advances fueled by superior firepower and an arsenal of advanced weaponry. Moscow's troops are moving at their fastest pace in over a year, deploying smart bombs to hit critical Ukrainian targets and unleashing relentless artillery fire to breach Ukrainian defenses. Amid signs of the conflict expanding with North Korean troops' involvement, Moscow's advances are reshaping the battleground. One of the defining features of this war has been the widespread use of drones by both sides. Ukrainian forces have effectively employed drones to target Russian tanks and other armored vehicles. Russia has also deployed drones both for surveillance and offensive purposes, including attacks on energy infrastructure. In a recent move, Russian-installed authorities in Horlivka, a town close to the front lines, have fitted local buses with drone jamming devices. These devices disrupt a drone's connection to its operator, rendering it uncontrollable and minimizing its threat.
Of course, the drone jammers are useful. They protected the transport, the people and the passengers.
I was approaching a bus without jammer. A guy who drove a bus off Route 8 was parked nearby when drones were flying. One drone tried to approach me when I was driving in Bessarabka. I have switched the jammer on and the drone flew away and dropped its payload. I have no idea what it was, but it was something.
The war in Ukraine has become a testing ground for modern warfare, with drones playing a pivotal role in shaping the battlefield. As the conflict continues, it is likely that we will witness even more innovative and destructive use of weaponry, pushing the boundaries of warfare into uncharted territory. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
And the United States has warned that North Korean troops fighting alongside Russia against Ukraine will return in body bags.
This is as Ukrainian President Zelensky once again made an appeal to Washington to supply long-range missiles, or at least give it permission to use those missiles and its weapons inside Russia, to target inside Russia. Now, addressing the UN Security Council, the US Deputy Ambassador Robert Wood issued a stern warning to North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and urged him to think twice before taking any reckless decision.
Now, this comes after US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin alleged that North Korean troops in Russian uniforms were advancing in the Kursk region. He called the move as dangerous and destabilizing.
The evidence now suggests that North Korea has sent around 10,000 soldiers to train in eastern Russia. And some of these DPRK troops have already moved closer to Ukraine. And we're seeing them outfitted with Russian uniforms and provided with Russian equipment. And I am increasingly concerned that the Kremlin plans to use these North Korean soldiers to support Russia's combat operations in Russia's Kursk region near the border with Ukraine.
Furthermore, Seoul's Defense Minister Kim Yong-hyun raised concerns of Pyongyang deploying as many as 11,000 troops to Russia. The defense minister said that deployment of troops may not trigger escalations in the Korean peninsula, but added that Pyongyang might add ballistic and nuclear weapons to its arsenal in exchange from Moscow. Both the defense heads of US and South Korea have also called upon North Korea to withdraw its troops from Russia.
Meanwhile, Russian Ambassador Vasily Nebenzia rubbished Washington's claims of Pyongyang deploying troops to fight alongside Moscow's soldiers against Kyiv.
These are mere assertions, and in the absence of any convincing evidence, they are aimed only at shifting the focus away from the real problems that pose a threat to international peace and security.
Meanwhile, Ukrainian President urged United States for the supply of long-range Tomahawk missiles, while also slamming the White House for leaking confidential information.
At least 29 people were injured and a child was killed by a Russian guided bomb.
When a lot of countries began to support victory plan, you see what's going on now in media, they said that Ukraine wants or wanted a lot of missiles like Tomahawk and etc. But it was confidential information between Ukraine and White House. How to understand these messages? So it means between partners there is no any confidential things.
Russia conducted large-scale nuclear drills in a show of readiness for potential retaliatory action amid ongoing geopolitical tensions. Now, this next story of ours explains a secretive Soviet-era system which would launch nuclear missiles if the country is attacked. Take a look at this report.
In a calculated show of force, Russia's strategic nuclear triad springs into action across its vast territory. The Plesetsk launch facility thunders as a Yars intercontinental ballistic missile arcs towards the Kamchatka Peninsula. Beneath the churning waters of the Barents and Okhotsk seas, the nuclear submarines Novomoskovsk and Knyaz Oleg unleash their deadly payloads in coordinated strikes. Meanwhile, Tu-95 strategic bombers pierce the skies, demonstrating their capability to deliver nuclear-tipped cruise missiles to target worldwide. Putin emphasizes with new missiles designed for quicker launch times, greater precision and enhanced capacity to penetrate missile defenses.
Taking into account the growing geopolitical tension, appearance of new external threats and risks, it is important to have modern and constantly ready-to-use strategic forces.
Apart from these weapons, Russia has something called a fail-safe device called Dead Hand, which will be activated in design for doomsday scenarios. Developed in the Cold War era, Dead Hand ensures that in the event of a catastrophic attack, Russia can retaliate even if its top leadership and command infrastructure are obliterated. Here's how it works. If Dead Hand detects a nuclear impact on Russian soil and fails to receive verification from the central command, it interprets this silence as a signal of incapacitation. After a programmed waiting period, it initiates a counter-strike by launching missiles from underground deep silos, initiating a full-scale nuclear response towards its adversaries in the Western world. This automated deterrent underscores the grim calculus behind nuclear warfare, ensuring that any preemptive strike against Russia would lead to mutual destruction. While Dead Hand has not been confirmed to be active, it's a chilling reminder of the Cold War paranoia lingering into modern geopolitics. Bureau Report, Beyond World is One.